Welcome back to another episode of the Call to Farms podcast. I'm your host, Tim Ing, and today we have a very special guest joining us. Josh Thomas is a true pioneer in the world of sustainable living and traditional skills. He and his wife, Carolyn, began their homesteading adventure in a second floor apartment in California and are now renowned teachers, raising 11 children on 40 acres in North Idaho. Together, they founded homesteadingfamily.com to help others achieve a healthier and more secure lifestyle through gardening, food preservation, and sustainable living. They also created the School of Traditional Skills, offering focused video classes that guide students from beginners to confident practitioners in various homesteading subjects. Josh and Carolyn embody the vision that Sophie and I aspire to for our homestead and family life. As fellow working couples managing multiple family enterprises, we look up to them and find great inspiration in their journey. I had the pleasure of meeting Josh at the Modern Homesteading Conference this year, where we discussed faith, family, and farming. I'm excited to continue that conversation today so that you can join us on this journey. When he isn't working the land or mending fences, Josh enjoys time with his family by the river or relaxing on the porch with Carolyn and a good cup of coffee. I'm excited to jump right in. Josh and I had an awesome conversation that I can't wait to share with you. So please join me in welcoming Josh to this podcast. Josh, thanks so much for agreeing to come on to our show. I just wanted to continue the conversation that we started at the Modern Homesteading Conference in Idaho. It was so great to finally meet you and Carolyn in person. And Sophie and I, we were just blown away with the chemistry that not only that both of you have, but with both of your teams, with the Homesteading Family team, the School of Traditional Skills. And that is something that was truly special to witness because it wasn't just some ordinary corporation or business, but it just felt like family coming
Mm.
together. And so thank you so much for coming on.
Oh, my pleasure. Thanks for inviting me to be here. It was just amazing to get to meet you and Sophie and to have you be a part of that event. And we're just blessed. We're just so blessed in the journey and our homesteading journey and then the journey into, speaking to the world about what we do and trying to encourage other people and the people that have rallied around us. And it's just we're just blessed. And it, none of it happens without all of them, and it really is a neat experience. And of course for us, that's the only time. They live all over the country, so it's the only time of the year that we get together to be in person, and so it's a really good time to connect.
It was definitely a very good time to connect, and so that was super special that we were able to witness that firsthand. So thank you for that.
Yeah.
Um, I wanted to dive a little bit into your story. I know you've mentioned your story on some other podcasts. I was wondering, you started off in SoCal, is that correct?
We're both SoCal kids, SoCal natives. And we both had country experience growing up, but not living the lifestyle. A little gardening with mom or grandma, and some animals. I had worked on a cattle ranch for a little while, managing horses, but not growing our food in this homestaying life. And then when we got married, it was off to the city to finish a college career and start business and kind of do the American dream, And so there we were in early 2000s in LA. Carolyn was teaching and I was building a construction company. And we thought that was life for our biggest hope was like maybe we can get to the outskirts one day, and have a little bit of property and do a few of those things we did growing up, kind of playing around just to enjoy. And that's what we thought life would be when we got started. But God had something else for us.
I love that
Yeah.
because both of your backgrounds was not into farming, and a lot of my clients, they've never done farming before, so this gives them hope. What made you and Carolyn answer the call to farms in particular?
Well, it's we like I said, we had little pieces of it, so it was something we enjoyed. Even when we moved to the city, we started out in an apartment, and we couldn't have anything but birds. So we had a couple parakeets, three parakeets on the, in the house, the three amigos, and a few tomato plants and whatever we could pack in on the balcony because we enjoyed that. But it was really a couple years later we were had been able to move back to the country because I'd gotten offered to build some houses there, and our business was growing, and so we were able to move back to the country where we had come from, and we had our firstborn son, and we had a vaccine reaction that opened our eyes, and it was mild, thankfully. There's a lot of people that have had a lot worse experiences, and so we're blessed that it was just an eye opener. But they gave him an extra vaccine. We didn't think about it much at the time, but we were both there in the office doing the first, or second, whatever, baby checkup. And then we got home and he had a bit of a reaction. And when Carolyn called in to check what they'd given him, they clearly said they'd only given him two, and we had both watched them give him three shots. And he did fine, but it made us go, wait a minute here. We're just trusting these people and told to just trust that they're doing the right thing. And it just began a search, and it began an educational process, especially for Carolyn as mom. I'm working, starting a business every day, and she's looking into these things and researching, and so it grew from that just kind of health concern, and realizing that we were giving over control, just kind of accepting the belief that they're the professionals, they know best, just do what they say. And we started to question that. And not that there wasn't value in what medical profession is doing, or different areas of our culture, but it made us start to question it through that. And that set us on a path, ultimately, to not be too long about it here so we can cover some ground. It just set us on a path that we realized we wanted to take a few things into our own hands, responsibility for the medical well-being of our kids as far as we could, and the food and the health of them, along with education and their spiritual well-being. So we kind of, through our own study in the word and growth spiritually, just kind of came to this belief that we need to focus on three areas, and that's spiritual purity, mental purity, and physical purity. Where, I would say we're three persons in one, in the image of God, and we have a physical element, some people call it the soul, but mental, emotional element, and then we have a spiritual element. And so we want to focus on those in raising our kids. And so we realized, okay, that means healthy food. On that piece of it. I mean, there's a whole, spiritual journey side, but we're talking about farming here. And so that started us, just Carolyn making more from scratch and buying healthier food. And then we realized we were going to have a large family. We had given that to God. That was part of our spiritual journey. And he just spoke to us, and, we were trying to lay all these things at his feet. We want to serve you. We want it to be what you want it to be. And he said, all right, I'm the author of life and kind of the Psalms 127. And so for us, it wasn't about an amount. It was just like, here you go, God, this is yours as well. We're surrendering. Well, we realized in a few years, the kids came quickly, and we were blessed. But we realized that, wow, if we're going to live this way, we're going to have to do things differently. And so it was a lot of values-based decisions at that time. So, okay, we want to raise our kids on organic, clean, whole food. We're probably going to need to raise a lot of it because it is expensive. And so, it was a values economic equation that drove us to start gardening, start raising chickens, plant some fruit trees. And then it just grew from there. And there's a lot of dovetailing of other values in just our culture, and how dependent our culture is on consumerism, and teaching the kids to be producers, a healthy economy, whether it's an individual, a family, a city, a nation. You need to produce more than you consume, right?
Yeah, right.
And that's not what we do in our debt-driven society. And so those values started to play into the lifestyle. And then just the agricultural life and the values that it teaches, that we were learning as we were raising our own food and raising kids together in that environment. And that just all kind of grew into this life that, eventually we called homesteading. At the time, we were just, so that's the first leg of the journey that got us going. And it was a very values-based decision at that time.
Josh, that's just music to my ears, because your story resonates with mine as well. I come from the military. I was always listening to all the doctors and complying with everything. And we also had, our youngest had a mild, like a reaction, a vaccine reaction. And because up until that point, Sophie and I, we couldn't agree on it. I thought it was a responsible thing to follow, right? And so it was because of that reaction then that took us like you down that journey as well. So and I loved how you talked about it's almost like you brought in the Trinity as well there with the mental and physical and spiritual right there,
Yeah,
bringing it together.
that's I mean, yeah, that's how I see it. I think I think that's the wholeness of our being. We can talk about it different ways, but that's the way
Mhm.
I like to talk about it, and
Yeah.
helps me understand our character and our nature as humans before God. Yeah.
And so what made you decide you said that God had said that, to have a large family. Did both of you come from large families?
We did not, no. Carolyn had three siblings, a brother and two sisters. And I came basically solo. I mean, my parents were divorced, so I was kind of the typical latchkey single kid. My dad got remarried, had two stepbrothers, and I spent some time with them. But most of my growing up was a solo latchkey kid, very poor. And in fact, when we got married and we had marriage counseling, I knew Carolyn wanted a few kids. Yeah, and I was a little scared of that, and we had to go through this counseling and prep, and so we had to do some of these non-negotiables, like what are the things that just aren't movable for you? Let's make sure you guys are on the same page. You know that before you get too far along. And for me, it was four kids. That was a compromise. Four kids felt like overwhelming to me. That idea of being a single latchkey kid, that was just like, whoa, I'm meeting her in the middle, and we were good with that. And through her heart and through God's leading, and that he opened my heart to thinking about things differently and opening the door in just my pursuit of serving him and just wanting to be where he wants me to be and where he wants my family to be. So it's had its challenges for sure, because that just was overwhelming thought, but he's brought us on this journey and it's been absolutely amazing.
And how many children do you guys have?
We have 11 children now. 10
And how
natural and one is adopted. Yeah. Yep.
wow. And
Yeah.
so then the question that most people are probably asking is, how do you divvy up the responsibilities, and how do you have things organized on your homestead then with 11
Oh my
children?
goodness. That's a long answer. It's been a process over time of us learning, and, early on, part of our philosophy became that if we want the kids to come along the way we want them to, we, one, have to be the example, and two, we need to walk, not run. And that was a very literal realization in a parking lot going into the grocery store. And our first son was just walking. We were in a hurry, but we realized we wanted him to learn to walk and mature with us and us to walk together. And so we had to slow down and hold his hand instead of carrying him or putting him in the cart. And somewhere we put him in the cart because we got to do groceries or whatever, and
Right.
move along a little bit. But that became kind of a theme of just slowing down and walking with them and involving them in what we're doing where we could. And so that took very intentional effort, and we've done it well at times. We haven't done it well at times, but I think it has paid fruit overall, and that just simple philosophy, and that just leads to involving them in things. And Carolyn's really good at this. I'm not as much. I'm a very, probably like you, Tim. I'm gonna guess because you're in the military. I like everything the way I like it. I like it where it
Yep.
belongs. I like order. I'm borderline. Carolyn would probably say I'm a perfectionist. I might say I'm a borderline perfectionist, but and and Carolyn's great at give them something simple like putting silverware in the silverware drawer. Who cares if it gets all in there all right? They're working in the kitchen with you. They're doing something. They're enjoying it because they're alongside mom or dad, and it's getting in there and it's messy, but it's okay. And they're learning simple things like that. And so she's been a wonderful example in that to me. And that plays out in many ways at different ages of life, and of course, obviously they mature, but they mature with that experience of contributing, having value, as you bring them along in that way.
That's wonderful. And so I want to get to how did you end up in Idaho? Because I have a lot of clients and they have spreadsheets and they do very detailed analysis of where they want to do their next homestead. So
Mm.
I want to know, how did you select where you're at right now in northern Idaho, going from SoCal?
Partially, well, a lot a God thing. When we started researching early on, Idaho came to the top of the list just for its we knew we wanted to homeschool. We're conservative libertarians, so we wanted as much freedom from a state perspective as possible. And Idaho offered that. But at first it was too expensive what we saw. And this was pre 2008 economic crash. And we didn't leave then, but we were thinking about it back then. And ultimately, when it came time to exit, we went to Tennessee, not far from where you're at, probably within an hour of where you are now, there in Monterey. And because it was less expensive, there was more water. We came from a very dry environment, and it was wonderful there, but it wasn't home. We didn't get seated. And through a few things, we had some friends from our hometown that moved to Idaho, and we ended up talking to them, and they said, "Oh, you'd love it. Come check it out." And originally we came, I came actually, and saw it and told Carolyn about it. And we said, yeah, let's do this. This is the very fast forward version. And we wanted to live near someone. I always recommend people when they're moving to find an anchor, that you should know somebody or have a solid job. Don't move for a new job, but have a solid job, or
Mhm.
be solid in your denomination. Have something that's an anchor, or spend a lot of time there. I say this because we've been through the stuff we've been through in a few moves. And so they were our anchor. We knew them. Let's some friendship. We can fellowship. We can have church. Where we just couldn't find anywhere to live. I mean, by this point, we've got 7 kids, a cow, pigs, chickens, ducks. Got it all in tow. It's coming in the trailer.
Yeah.
And it was funny. One place that we found close to them said yes to everything but the kids. Once they heard how many kids, they said no. and And so for us, it ended up being a God thing. I mean, or however you want to look at it. I look at it as a God thing, but the place we found was up here where we're at now in the area, not this home. We bought this a few years later, but we found a place to lease. That was another thing. It was like, well, we don't have an anchor. We're going to lease for a while first, not just buy. I went through that. I went through buying land, paying cash for it, ended up being an area that I had a hard time getting out of it. I lost money. Okay, rent for a while. Make sure you know the area, make sure you know your micro area, even if you love the state and all those things. And the place that we found was just way up here, way far, way away from our anchor, but God brought us to. And we fell and came home. And we were meeting a lot of other people that were coming here, kind of going, I don't know why I'm here, but we drove through. It's just a million stories, but it's an interesting thing here, and I imagine it's happening other places in the country. Yeah, in the end, it resonated with our values, and we found community here. Besides a beautiful place to live, and a pretty decent environment to live our homesteading part of life as well.
It's absolutely breathtaking out there. Thank you for sharing that because there's a lot of little nuggets there, good nuggets there, because it dispels the rumor that you have to be uber wealthy to do homesteading. And in that story
Mm,
alone, you showed that there are some trial and errors and you tried different locations and it might not be the very first one that you landed on like in Tennessee and that you did end up in Idaho and it works for you. Now, I want to talk a little bit about School of Traditional Skills because I'm really excited about what you offer, this online platform that has and I'll let you tell a little bit more about it, but it's an online platform that teaches traditional skills for those, and this is super helpful for all my clients, absolutely all of them, including myself,
mm,
getting into homesteading, not knowing what to do. And instead of going online and searching on YouTube, going to a place that already has great content that's already curated with subject matter experts. So I would love to ask you, actually, why don't you talk a little bit about School of Traditional Skills, if you don't mind?
yeah, sure. If once you get onto this homestead journey, and obviously there's a lot to learn. So what do? You go to Google, you go to YouTube primarily. Hopefully you go to some books as well. But even
Mhm.
the books, you're going to go to the bookstore, try to find some books, find somebody that's some recommend. It's just you're on the search for knowledge. And the knowledge at one point was very limited, and that was our experience, 22 years ago. Now it's vast and overwhelming, and you find that you've got a lot to sift through. Is it reliable? Is it trustworthy? There's a lot of entertainment, a lot of clickbait, a lot of things to get you there. And so it's a lot of work just to find good information. And I find that once people have been, working to apply this lifestyle wherever they're at, whether it's gardening or food preservation or raising animals, they get a little ways into it. And it's like, I don't have time for this. I need to learn. I need to learn the skills, get out there and apply them. And that was our experience, just from the other side of just not having much reason, no YouTube, no Google. And so we had people asking us questions, especially when we were in California and doing everything way different than everybody else was. And they were like, it was kind of weird, but they were intrigued and like, whoa, how do you do this? You're making your own bread. So, just people were asking questions. And before School of Traditional Skills was Homesteading Family. And that was the beginning. But Carolyn and I knew that we were limited in what we could share, what our knowledge base is. And so we had this vision for the school that was education based, education first, not infotainment. That's
Yeah.
great. There's lots of good inspiration, there's lots of good stories, and that's wonderful. Those have a role to play. But we saw the need for quality education. I'm an entrepreneur. Carolyn's been an entrepreneur with me, but she's also an educator. And so we had the idea to create a platform where we brought other people in that specialized in skills. And you had this online school where you had good classes. They're not too short, they're not too long. You can get in there, learn the skill that you need to learn within a decent amount of time, learn to apply it, come back and easily find little spots where you're like, what did Carolyn say about this little thing? And it's easy to find. There's paperwork that you can download if you want stuff in your hand, and just trying to provide a better journey for people, because it is a long learning curve. And no matter what, you've got to get out there and, put the work in, put the sweat in, some trial and error. But we can help, and we can help by sharing that knowledge and bringing knowledge from the larger community of people that are sharing in a collective way. And that's the heart of it, is just helping people speed that journey up and help people. What maybe took us 20 years to get to a certain place, hopefully we can help people get there in 5 years, or 6 years or 4 years. I don't know, it depends on what you're trying to tackle. And it's that, we don't have the grandparents, we don't have the aunts and uncles that just pass that stuff down.
Yeah, I love that. You're helping others read through the noise. There is a lot of infotainment out there, as you mentioned. So I love it. It's great quality. And I have been recommending my clients go to it. So, and subscribing. So thank you so much. As the founder of the School of Traditional Skills, are you noticing a pattern? Are you seeing a pattern as to like what the newbies, when they just log on, what skills they want to learn first?
I see people in a lot of different places. There's just the common entry points of gardening, food preservation, chickens for animals, rabbits are growing in interest. I think more what I see though is people want to do it all. They want to do everything as quickly as they can. And so that's part of, I see my job is to help people find balance a little bit and tackling one thing at a time, and finding that path. But gardening, food preservation, and small animals are the entry points for most people. A lot of times it's through bread or canning. These are things you can do at home. You don't have to radically change your life to start building skills, but you can gain a little bit of control of your food, and put a little food security on the shelf through those things. Same with gardening, taking a little off the grocery bill. So those are really the key entry points. Herbs right now is a big entry point as well.
Mhm.
Has been, especially the last 4 years, people have that interest has surged in that medical freedom, and looking at how we can deal with things a little bit differently. So we see a high interest there as well. Matter of fact, we have a couple classes on herbs, and we just filmed a class on growing your own medicinal garden that goes with the classes on using those herbs for different things. And yeah, so that's a lot of it, but people come at it from a lot of different angles.
That's exciting. Out of sheer curiosity, when you started it, what was the skill that you wanted to learn?
Wow, what was a skill I wanted to learn? Probably beekeeping, which we have a class on, but I haven't done yet.
Okay. That
Beekeeping is a key one that we don't employ yet, and it's been a bandwidth issue. And we have a great class that I love on beekeeping, but that's the first one that comes to mind. That's tops. Yeah.
yeah. No, that's wonderful. I love that the fact that your background is in construction. So how has that helped you, in homesteading besides, obviously building? Did you build your home?
Not this home we are in. I built a home. We went from a quarter acre to 5 acres, and the 5 acres was raw land. That was back in 2007, and we built that and built a homestead there. Um, It's helped a lot, and it's a combination of things. I have a degree in architecture, but I went in, I had worked in construction before that, so I started a contracting company. Um, then I got into property management after the 2008 crash, and so it was like all these pieces came together, and so I was building homes. I was developing, 5-acre pieces of property for custom homes. I had done landscaping as a guy in my 20s. My dad always managed some larger properties like Girl Scout camps and county parks and some things like that. So I'd been exposed to that. So I had a lot of pieces that just kind of stacked up and definitely made it natural. And then as we were on our journey, when we got that 5 acres, we discovered permaculture through Joel Salatin. And then I dove into studying permaculture and getting certified in that, and did some consulting, and that just all built, and it's all aided a lot in being able to put things together. And I think even then to be able to, because through that I've worked with so many people, whether it's building their home or developing their property, that's helped a lot, feeding into then sharing knowledge in this more specific way in just dealing with people and kind of understanding what they're experiencing and where they might be at.
Yeah. Thank you. I mean, I know we talked about looking for a location. We talked about building skills. Now, I also want to dive into like speaking from a dad, to another dad, having
Mm,
kids, how to motivate our children, because you were just talking about that's my dream as well. And for others, my clients, creating more producers instead of consumers. And that's why we homeschool as well. But there are rough days, there are some tough days on the homestead. How do you motivate your children, when times get tough, when they don't want to go out, when it's too hot? What are some of the techniques, some of the tips and
yeah.
tricks as a dad to motivate the kids?
Well, I'll share those, but let me give a little disclaimer, or at least a little candidness first, because what we've done from the beginning with our kids. And while we had a long journey of learning culture into our culture, and that's, I think some of what I'll say here in a minute will help, but that is a different journey. And I understand that. And I sympathize with that, because that's a little bit different story, though I think the values still apply. And so we've built a culture, one of working together, of doing the slowing down, doing things together. It's evolved a little bit. It's so big and busy now that a lot of times it's the older kids doing their things, and they've got little kids with them, or we have interns, and so it's more dynamic than it when it was just our nuclear family and they were younger. But we really bring them along, and I think the biggest thing is, as they're working with us and we're giving them things to do, we're recognizing the value they're bringing and the necessity that they have within the culture that they live. Our culture today, kids have no value. They go to public school, they're a cog, they're being moved through a system. They're being told to do this, to do that, to go here, to go there. They've got all the social media. They exist to consume things, and that doesn't bring value. And obviously I'm talking in a broad culture, but where our culture is pushing things. And so I
Mhm.
don't think that I think parents have to work really hard to let their kids know that you have value and purpose in this world. And I think that the lifestyle that we have, if we do it well, and we can err, and we can drive too hard and expect a lot to happen and not have thankfulness or community or value. But when we value them and we talk about, like, we couldn't have done this without you, even if it's a little person putting the silverware away. Yeah, so talking about just bringing them value, letting them know your value, and that's a core premise to ours, that kids today don't think are being taught the value and purpose that they have in this world, that they were made, they were created to do something, they have purpose. And so this life allows us to bring them along and celebrate their value as they contribute on any level. And I'd say that's probably the biggest thing, is recognizing what they do, working with them where they're at, walking, not pushing too hard, which is
Mhm.
homesteaders, we're good at pushing hard. Most of us are all hard workers.
Yeah.
And I have not met a homesteader that isn't willing to work. We're motivated. And if anything, we can run over the people that are a little slower than us. And that often means the younger kids, or the older kids that are maybe new to the lifestyle. And so you got to try to find things. So value them. Make sure you communicate their value. I'll come back to what I was going to say. Make sure you communicate value, and that they know that they're a part of this. When you sit down at a meal, when you start to live this lifestyle, all of a sudden stuff starts popping up to your plate that you raised. And it starts with often one thing and then another thing. Celebrate that together. Talk about what you guys did together and celebrate the value of that individual. That is very, very powerful. So that's something I think that has worked well for us. The other thing is, as no matter what age they're at, particularly as they get older, we give them a voice in what we're doing. So we do what's called a homestead huddle. We try to do it once a month. We don't always get it well, but we take the temperature of everybody. How you doing? How's things going for you? What are you liking? What are you not liking? And then twice a year, because of our climate, we have to shift what we're doing because we go from kind of spring, summer mode to fall, winter mode. Usually happens late fall, right? And late spring. And that's when we make some shifts. And so we take things into consideration there, and then we move people around. And they thought they wanted to do something. They did it for 6 months and they're like, oh, I don't really like this anymore. Sometimes they got to keep doing it because that's the need of the household. And we explain that. Other times we get to move them on to do something else. And it gives people the chance to experience things. But no matter what, they know they have a voice and they know they're heard and they're understood. And they're more accepting of things not going their way all the time if they know that. And it's the same with the day to day. If they know that they can come talk to you and work it out, and they know they have a voice, they come along, I think, a lot better and a lot happier.
Yeah, those are some really good points about bringing value and making sure that they know that they have value. Through this process, have you been able to discover like perhaps like the gifts that each of your child brings, help them discover what those gifts are?
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely a goal and understanding what their gifts in life are. And I guess I don't think about that quite so much in the homesteading aspect of just what does God have for them. And it's another thing, we're raising them. Well, we hope, and our goal is to hope that they will remain connected to the land, that they will appreciate the agrarian life, and that whatever they do, they will see value in that. But ultimately, God has a purpose in them, and so I think the sweet spot where God has a purpose for them, He's going to gift them. And so yes, we try to help them find that. And we've got leaders, we've got writers, we've got musicians, we've got artists, we've got very focused doers. And so we try to celebrate that and cultivate that as well along the way. And sometimes that applies in the homesteading life specifically. A lot of times it applies in the social life or the arts or, wherever it is.
You beat me to the punch because my follow-up question was going to be like, what is your ultimate dream for your children now
Yeah.
that you built this up?
Well, the ultimate dream is that they know Christ and that they serve Christ first and foremost, and that they
Amen.
they, they find His purpose for them. I believe that every single one of us has a purpose. I don't feel like I totally found my purpose until my 40s, but I had no shepherding, and I had a very broken childhood, and so that's been part of my goal is to help the kids see that God loves you. First, you need Christ. And second, he has something for you to do. He's gifted you, and you have something in this world to be productive and to contribute to the world to make it a better place in a way that glorifies God. And if we can achieve those two things, help them achieve those two things, I'm a happy guy. I'm a happy dad. And Carolyn
Amen.
are happy parents. Yeah.
Those are
Yeah.
some good pearls of wisdom right there. Something that I've experienced that I've seen actually from some clients. I've had clients that come and then they do everything. They just get involved with everything. They can make their own toothpaste. They'll just get to nitty gritty of being super healthy, and then they burn out, and then
Mm,
they move.
yep.
Uh, what are some of your tips? What's some advice that you can offer to help avoid homestead burnout?
Well, they're doing the same thing we all do, and we want to do it all. And you know, everybody listening here, probably your clients, we're a motivated bunch of people. You guys have deep reasons for doing what you're doing, for going counterculture, for being willing to spend your time and your resources working in the soil, in the heat, in the cold, instead of having the boat or going to the movies a few extra times or buying that latte or whatever it is. And you're investing in this life, and we overdo it, and we over exceed our capacities, and we burn ourselves out. And so my encouragement is to it's going to be okay. We can only do so much in a day, we can only do so much in a year. You're moving forward. Create a plan that's doable and realistic. You have to learn that as you go, and you don't have to do it all. And so you gotta figure out what are your gifts, what are your abilities, and what works for you. And some of that's just your passion and however you entered this lifestyle. And so some people it's making toothpaste, it's making the food and the products that you put on your body. That's a great thing to do. You don't have to do that and have a giant garden and milk a cow, and start where you're at, learn skills and build into it. And then that's hard because again, I know we feel urgency. A lot of people feel urgency, but there's a faith element, I think, to this where we do just like we should do the rest of life. We trust God. We step forward 1 foot at a time, and sometimes we run, but we need to try not to run all the time and get ahead of, I would say get ahead of God, but get ahead of where we're at. Yeah.
That
Um,
that's some
yeah.
great advice because I believe there is a thing as like homestead peer pressure where you just feel like that's the expectation. I have to, and I have to work with clients who are like, I have to get hundreds of acres of land. I'm like, no, and I agree totally wholeheartedly with you, Josh. Like, just start off small. You just need only a quarter. You only need 1 acre just to feed your own family. And just start off small and just niche down to what you want to do. And that's why community is so important. So that you can get involved and not have to raise every single animal. You don't have to do everything. And
You bring
go ahead.
you bring up an excellent point in the size of land. I experienced this when I built custom homes for people. They always wanted bigger houses instead of maybe more energy efficient and less maintenance. They put their money into bigger. And you guys, most of you don't need that kind of land. Yes, I'm on 40 acres. We're utilizing 5 and producing at least 60% of all of our food for 12 to 15 people a day on 5 acres. And that 5 acres has houses, ponds, buildings, besides pasture and gardens. And so this is you speak right into something that I'm passionate about, because you go buy this big land and that's a lot of money,
Yep.
and it limits then you have your money. And with homesteading, there's a learning curve. We can have these discussions. You can learn from the school nutritional skills or whoever you're learning from in the books, but you still got to go out there and do it, and it takes time and money. And the more land you have, the more you feel like you have to take care of, you know.
Mhm.
So try to buy smaller, or if you do buy bigger, limit yourself. We limited ourselves to 5 acres, and now on the 6th year, we've started to reach out past that in a real way, and got a hold of what we're doing. And I don't judge the 5 years. It's just you got to figure out your own timeline, but you don't need that much. Having those additional resources, both in finances and time, if you don't use it for the big land, is going to help you tremendously.
Yeah, and we were just talking about land right now, and I'm glad I have you on because some of my clients, they think that they can save money by just going after raw land. And I have to tell them, like, no, you have to take into consideration the utilities, all the things that all the other hidden costs. I was wondering if being in construction in the past, like what are some of those hidden costs that they may not factor into?
Yeah, well, access is first and foremost, and in any like, I don't do much consulting anymore, but when I do, access is number one. And most people, when I say access, they think just legality, and that's certainly first thing and important, but they don't think about the cost of putting in and maintaining access on raw land. It's a huge factor in your resources and your time, and then depending on where you live, the weather you might have to contend with. So that's one. Power, water is another one. Those things you have to get in. And then and Tim, I know you know real estate, and this is a moving target, and it
Mhm.
depends on the season and the economics, but sometimes it's cheaper to build a home than buy one, and sometimes it's cheaper to buy a home than build one. And so you got to know your market and do the research there a little bit, is what I would say, because I've seen different things over my 22 years of business in these different areas. And so you got to know. And yeah, I'm a custom home builder at heart. I was a carpenter at heart. I love finished carpentry. That's how I started my business, high end precision
Mm.
finished carpentry. And I overbuilt my first house and put too much money into it and made those mistakes. And when we went looking for our final land, we had this discussion and we said, no, we want a home that's got the good pieces. It doesn't have to be the nicest, perfectest home. It just has to have the things we need. And I'm so glad we did that, as opposed, in our case, of searching for raw land. I might have been able to build it cheaper for over time, but whew, there's the other thing people do. They want raw land.
Mhm.
Then they want to build a home, start a
Yep.
garden, get a milk cow, have animals, all at
Yeah.
the same time. Yeah, you're gonna burn out. You are going to burn out, and I don't care how much money
Really.
you have. You only have so much time, and it
Mhm.
takes even if you have a lot of money, it just takes a certain amount of time to manage all of that and do it. And so, yeah, be careful there when you're buying raw land. There's a lot of pitfalls.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially for my clients, they think that they're going to save money. I said, yeah, maybe at first if you're phasing it out, but you're actually, if you find a home that is like maybe not as desirable, but maybe like a manufactured home, they already have all the utilities there, saving you lots of money and just demo that. But what you were saying is absolutely right. The modern, like the trend right now in the housing market is the new builds, they're just trying to give it away now. They're giving you great discounts and a lot of the resales now, the home prices are coming down. But what you were just talking about, I wish I saw what you did, like the cabinetry you did, the high-end cabinetry. My question is there such a thing as a perfect homestead?
Oh man, I'd say yes and no. So, in the practical sense, no, you're always it's a home, it's land, it's got people involved, it has all we're not in a perfect world. So, you're always going to be shaping it. You're always going to be moving it somewhere. Most land is deteriorated. Most homes, and I can tell you, if you've never built a house before and you're going to build a house, you're going to build it. And right away, you're going to wish you had done some things differently. It just comes with the territory, you know? And so in that sense, no. But can you find peace and satisfaction in a place that you've decided to settle and make this life and it's complete in the sense of the word perfect? Usually in the Bible, when they use perfect, the word's actually complete. It's actually full,
Mhm.
uh, not perfection as we think of like Christ being perfect. And can you find that sense of that in the imperfect homestead and have your perfect place and be
Mm.
fulfilled in it? Yes, absolutely. And I can say that here for us, I am totally content. This is the perfect place for us for our future, and I will always be trying to perfect it for the rest of my life in the day-to-day workings of what I hope to do here, if all of that makes sense.
Oh, that's so beautiful, Josh. Like it's always unfinished because there's always something else you can add or something
Yeah.
else you can do. What you just said, that example is what I tell all my clients. I always ask them, like, on a scale of 1 to 10, what do you think about this house? And I said, there's no such thing as a 10 out of a 10 because even if you were a multimillionaire and custom built a home, the very next day you wish you had changed something about
Right.
it. So just like what you said.
Yeah. Always. Well, and this is why in permaculture on the land, you leave everything temporary for as long as you can until you've experienced several annual cycles on the land. I mean, you have to have permanence to get in and settle, but for that exact reason, because you're going to find as you get in there, oh yeah, this doesn't. I want this to work this way, or it doesn't quite work that way, and so the lighter the touch you can have, the more you're going to get closer to that ideal as you spend some time and engaging in your land. That's hard to do with a house because a house is a permanent structure. You got to live in it, but in the land, we can go a little softer and gentler and still have systems, but not, I was going to say permanentize them. That's not a word, but we'll go with it. And you take some time to do that and you'll get a little closer to perfect anyways.
I really enjoy speaking with you. It reminds me of like speaking with Joel or with Sean Doherty. And I
Oh
was
my gosh.
wondering, you're one of the OGs in homesteading, and so I was wondering, what is a common misconception about homesteading that you'd like to debunk?
Oh, I think that it's a destination that you just we have these dreams and they're good dreams and we can have our perfection like I was saying ago. But it's in your heart, it's in your attitude along with the things you do. And I think people just think they're going to come in and spend some time, some resources, set this thing up, and it's all great and perfect, and I'm there and I've arrived. And I think that is a recipe for some hurt and some pain and some disaster in your life. This is a journey. We're reclaiming things that have been lost. They were never as ideal as we think they were. We're missing a lot of ideals for sure. When we think about tradition and we think about, I like to talk in terms of agrarian culture and society. But yes, there's a lot of things we've lost, but it was never as perfect as we think it is. But we come in with this perfect ideal. And so I think that's the biggest misconception that I see. and that you just got to come in with this scene that it's a journey. You're on a journey, and it's a wonderful, amazing journey, but we're always going to be going somewhere.
You touched on like agrarian culture. Now there's a huge movement from those that are moving away from society, from cities to this agrarian culture. How do you address concerns of isolation, getting into something that's new, for them to have a lack of a modern amenities all at once and moving to a homestead?
Well, know yourself. You don't have to go away from everything. You kind of need to know your plan, what you want. Look, we're half an hour away from a small town, and that's good with us. I used to think I wanted to be 20 miles out, and I'm a pretty good. I'm actually a bit of an introvert, and I could live
Yeah.
my life on my homestead and have a few good close relationships and be okay. But I've found that, you know what, I'm glad I'm not 20 miles out. And so knowing yourself a little bit can help with that, and knowing what you can give up, and you need to give it all up at once. Be careful with that. I think just we've got to have some self introspection before we dive in, and just again tread in lightly. Some people are going to be great 20 miles out. That's what they want, that's what they need, and they're great. Make sure you and your partner and your family are together on that, you know and some of us, I mean, look, we're half an hour from town, and most people think we're like way, way, way out in the middle of nowhere. But you can go have 5 acres 10 minutes from town if you need more of those, and so I think just know yourself, depending on how many people you have involved, be willing to compromise and find that happy medium with everybody involved in your household, and you're gonna do a lot better. Also in the country, there's it's different in the country in that we can be spread out. I've got a neighbor, back over there. I rarely see her, but she's a part of my community. I'm there for her and her family. She's there for us. We have a great chat when we cross on the road, on the country road, and we stop in the pickup truck and talk for a while, and that's still community. Those are still relationships, even though it's not in town or in the suburbs. And find those out when you go to the country. Don't just go isolate yourself out of fear or feeling different. Go meet people. A matter of fact, I encourage people to do this before you buy land. Go talk to the neighbor and find out what they think about you buying the property. That's another good thing to understand. And community maybe looks different, and it feels different, but it's there. You just need to come get in the flow with the community that's there, not expect it to shift around you, and what your experience was from wherever you came from. So those are, I think, 2 points that I would give to people to think about.
Yeah, I love that because I also consider myself an introvert, and I think a lot of us who are homesteading are a little bit introverted as well.
Mhm.
So what you're just recommending right now and suggesting, and I heard it on your YouTube channel as well, is don't wait for them to bring the cookies. You go out and introduce, say hi and introduce yourself, and that takes some courage to get out of your comfort zone. It's a
It
good tip.
does, especially in North Idaho with long driveways.
Yeah. In terms of School of Traditional Skills, you already mentioned that you have a couple of herb classes coming up. What else do you have planned?
Well, there are a couple herb classes. There's one on that's already there, one on first aid, herbal first aid. So it's actually a first aid class. So you get basic first aid, which
Wow.
everybody on the homestead, but you get it through just in the places, besides the mechanics of first aid where you're going to use medicine, you get it through the ability to use herbal medicine. There's an herbal colds and flus to just help deal with a lot of the minor things that we all deal with, that we can handle those things at home more. And then the upcoming class in that category is, again, how to grow a lot of those herbs so that you can have your own garden and not have to buy them. So just another layer of resilience in that area. And then right now the school is focused a lot around food in this stage. Eventually we'll expand out. So there are multiple classes on gardening, from different styles of gardening to beginner gardening to building soil and composting. We've got a class coming out on kind of survival gardening, growing literally a ton of food for a year, and knowing how to plant a garden to grow the calories that you need, and a few other ones. We call them buckets. So there's a gardening bucket of classes to help you through your journey on gardening. There's a section on raising animals from the dairy cow to the dairy goat to raising both egg laying chickens and meat chickens to pasturing animals. I've actually got a class here in teaching small scale pasturing, rotational grazing on the homestead scale, not the big scale, and shows you how much you can do on a small piece of property. So a lot on raising animals. We're always growing that. And then a lot of preservation, from canning to dehydrating to fermenting to freeze drying to freezing. There's a few classes on processing meat and packaging it. A lot of people don't think of freezing as preservation, but it's preservation, butchering, and freezing. So we cover that pretty well. And then some traditional cooking classes as well. There's some homestead design there to help you get ahead of laying out your homestead, whether you're raw land or existing infrastructure, how to think about that and set it up to work well for you. So those are some of the things we're doing now, and we're building on those. And eventually we'll deepen that into some of the crafts and probably construction. We get a lot of requests for people just knowing how to work with woodworking tools so they can build the basics for themselves or fix things. So those are some of the things we're looking at doing upcoming. Maybe some home defense, home self-defense is another one we're thinking about that we've had people ask for. So we're exploring that. And yeah,
I'd love to teach that.
There's a lot we want to do. We just like homesteading, we can only do so much in a day, and there's so much neat stuff to do. So we're trying to tackle the core skills that help people build this homestead life, and then we can go on to some of the ancillaries that are really help support it or help people build that agrarian economy through other skills, down the road.
That sounds like a lot of exciting stuff. From one entrepreneurial family to another, like Sophie and I really admire you and Carolyn. You have your School of Traditional Skills. She has her homesteading family business. Sophie and I have found that we have different strengths and that we complement each other, working together in a real estate team. She loves data. She loves numbers. I love to talk to people. As introverted as I am, I can deal with, one-on-one. So my question is, how do you and Carolyn leverage your individual strengths in your businesses?
Oh, just by focusing on what we do well. And when we got married, we decided not to pursue architecture and a further degree in that business. We decided to choose an entrepreneurial path. She knew she wanted to be a home. The main reason she got a degree in education was mostly for fallback if something happened to me, and then she knew she wanted to home educate her kids. So but from the time we started business, we were always involved together. She always helped, and it was mostly me working, and she worked in the beginning, and then we had kids, and she did that, but she was always involved. And then with Homesteading Family, this was actually her idea. It was her concept in the beginning of sharing knowledge of what she had struggled so much to learn and didn't have that older mentor or that older woman. And so it was her passion to start this. It was a side thing. It was just kind of the kids were getting a bit older, and she's just got a brilliant mind and active mind. And so it was just this small side project to help other people and maybe help the household economy a little bit. And this was in our transition to Idaho, and had some tough times. And we put together though, and we took her experience and her knowledge and my business knowledge and having built a few businesses and obviously my homesteading experience and God bless that and that work together. So we've just done exactly what you're talking about with you and Sophie, and just finding where our skill sets are and working together and respecting those and appreciating those. And we know marriage, it has its challenges. We bump once in a while, but in the big picture, we've learned to complement each other and work with each other's gifts. And man, what a beautiful journey that is and can be.
Yeah, it certainly is a beautiful journey. Thank you so much, Josh. This has been a real treat. It's been really special just having this conversation with you. I was wondering, for our viewers, where can they go to learn more about you and Carolyn and your family business?
Oh man, yeah. Go to homesteadingfamily.com if you want. That is Carolyn and I and our journey. And Carolyn does most of the teaching over there, but we're both there on YouTube and our podcast and all that. And that's a little more just kind of home and getting a picture of our life along with some good education. And then schooloftraditionalskills.com as well, where that's a bit fuller educational platform and community where we're just serious about bringing you good instructors. And you can go to the websites, you can go to social media, whatever social media you use. We don't use it personally, but we use it for those platforms. And so, just go there, and we'd love to meet you. To us, this is big family. It's, we just love engaging. I think one of the hardest parts, you didn't ask this question, but one of the hardest parts for us is it grew and it got so big that we can't connect as much with people, but we try to keep it family feeling and inspirational. And we just love seeing you guys step along on this journey and see more people entering it. And it's a blessing to us. And so we hope to see you and connect with you somewhere over there in one of those places.
That's so awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that. Sophie and I love watching the Homesteading Family YouTube and School of Traditional Skills. Like I said, I recommend it to all my clients. Great resource. So thank you, Josh. Thanks for your time. And for everyone else listening in and tuning in, stay healthy. Until next time.
Thanks, Tim. Been awesome to hang with you. Thanks, everybody.